Hey everybody, welcome to our CS and PM alignment video series. This is a video series that we've been doing to cover the key findings from our 2019 CS and PM alignment report. This is a report and a survey that we actually did back in 2017, and we wanted to see where the gaps lie in team alignment today. Have we made any progress since 2017 and those types of things. We thought what better way to cover a lot of these key findings than to talk to the experts themselves. So I do have a couple of questions today. This might be a familiar face for you guys. This is Jennifer Chiang. She is the Director of Customer Success at Yup. So we want to talk to her today about some of the findings and things in the report revolving around communication between teams and how teams can better communicate, what types of things they can communicate to each other, etc. So before we do jump into that, I did want you to just kind of introduce yourself a little bit. Just tell us about, your journey in customer success so far and what kinds of things you're working on.
Sure. Super excited to be here, by the way. I love the report and I highly recommend it for everyone to read it. So my journey in customer success, I think like everyone else's, is kind of like there was no like I majored in it and I got here, right? So
Right.
everyone's path was a little different. I started out in kind of the business development side, a little bit of sales, and I realized that a lot of my customers, well, I loved them and I felt like I wasn't setting them up for success post-sale. And that's kind of where I started my journey of being like, okay, now that I've closed this client, let me make sure that they're onboarded well. And then after they're onboarded, let me make sure that they're engaged. And as I did more and more of that work, we kind of created this customer success team here at my company, Yup. And it's been growing ever since. That's kind of how my customer journey went. And I actually detail it in my book, which I will talk about later.
Awesome. Cool. Sounds good. Alrighty, so let's dig into this first question I have for you, which is I would like to ask you, what role does collaborative communication kind of play in the success of team alignment? A lot of the report we have is revolved around communication because we did find a few key findings where we felt like teams maybe just weren't communicating the best that they could, and there was a lot of ways to improve in that area. So, what role to you does collaborative communication play in the success of team alignment?
And that's a great, great question. It plays such a huge role. And I think it's important for mainly, three reasons. One, we want to make sure that we're pushing features that customers actually want. And when there's alignment with product, with all teams, but especially product, we can really push that customer-centric kind of ideal and story and kind of the mindset. And that's really important because if we push features that customers don't want, then or customers are like not customer centric, that's actually going to hurt a company. The second reason is that we can maintain a better pulse throughout the company and relay feedback from the customer to the product team, kind of keeping that loop going. And so, for example, here at Yelp, we share customer stories on a daily basis so that everyone from the engineer to the CEO to the sales reps can understand our customers from their lens so that our entire team is more customer centric. And what's really great is that they come up with ideas and I can help implement them, which is awesome. And then I think the third thing that is so important when it comes to collaborative communication, especially with CS and product, is allowing ourselves to better manage expectations with the customer. So kind of what I mean is, so we have a lot of amazing features. Some of them are customer suggestions. Some of them we're just really excited about. Managing those expectations with the customer, understanding from the product side, where are things on the roadmap? How do we create that trust and how can we maintain that trust with the business and customer? So like the easiest kind of hypothetical example is that if we say, hey, we're going to launch this awesome new feature next week, but it's actually not going to be ready for 2 months, that's actually not good for the customer or for us. So we want to make sure that we can have that good collaborative communication so that we can maintain that trust with the customer.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's a very common thing that happens is, features either not going out on time and just miscommunication in that area I find specifically is a pretty big one, especially in the SaaS world. And I do like the point you made about customer stories and sharing those with each other as well. I do think that can make a pretty big impact. So this kind of second part I have to this is what are maybe some of the most like critical types of communications that should be taking place between the two teams? I know we know it's important, but what are some of the like nitty gritty things you think that the team should be sharing with each other? And you've touched on this a little bit, but
yeah, so I can see it almost from like two different levels. And I think we've been talking about like how constant communication is just so key to a thriving product and a good CS, Pro CS relationship. The first side, I think, is more like the relationship level. So we can have a little bit more of like a broader audience. So kind of what I was talking about before, sharing those reports, sharing those stories on a broader scale. For example, we use Slack. And so we can just share it out to the world, and sharing that stories with data, including product members on that report and in that sphere is also really important. Along those lines, it's also about having a common language with each other. So for example, if I calculate WAU, so weekly active users, differently than product, we need to make sure that that's aligned.
Right.
So I think that's like the broader audience. But then there's also like the targeted audience, like on the relationship levels. I have one-on-ones with our head of product, and it's really just a great way for us to keep checks on each other. Of how can I make sure that I'm demonstrating the value of customer success to her, and how she can demonstrate the value of product to me, and we can just understand what we're worried about, what we're frustrated with, and kind of brainstorm that way in a more informal sense, which is really powerful. Mm-hmm. I think another type of critical communication is kind of on the feature level. So throughout the entire lifespan of a product feature, CS and product need to be communicating all the time. So whether that is the very beginning, so we're brainstorming, we got some feedback. We're brainstorming on this feedback on how do we make sure that we can create a new feature that addresses this feedback properly. And that's where product and CS can start kind of jiving. After we figure out that feature, then we do some collaborative spec work. So what this means is that product may create the spec, but CS should make sure that we're checking for the voice of the user, right? Is the voice of the user there? Then it comes, once the spec is created, then it's being built. And release planning is just such a big thing. So whether that is understanding the timing, which I kind of mentioned earlier, as well as the prioritization. Is this feature more important than this feature? Let's look at the customer feedback. 20% of our users are saying that this feature would help them a ton. Maybe that's a big amount. So maybe that we should like prioritize that over this other one that only 5% of users say.
Right.
And then after, the feature is built, the communication doesn't stop there. We have to go through product marketing, making sure that not only are us CS aware and educated on how the product works, but that we can also teach and have the materials and resources to teach our customers how to use the product or how to use a new feature. And also to like build it into like success plans and all this other fun stuff and onboarding. And then I think after that, the cycle kind of loops back around. So once the feature's out in the world, we can get more feedback, and just kind of the life cycle of product right there.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. I think kind of the overall key takeaway here is that like the communication doesn't end. I think it's a constant process that we're all, I think we're all still trying to work through, how to communicate effectively and what things to communicate. But we talked a lot in the report about how, we had a lot of findings where we found like the teams maybe weren't sharing the right key metrics and things like that. So that's what kind of really sparked, some of this conversation. And I think you've had some really good key takeaways here and some actionable items that people can take away from this. So that was great. Before we go, I do want to talk about where you can find this report. So if you are on our website and you can drop down to the resources tab, you will find the full report there. You can download that and see all of the key findings. Before we go, I also want to just give you a minute if you want to throw in a little bit of a plug. I know you have a book, and I would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Sure, yeah, and I highly recommend the report again. It's really awesome. So I have a book. It's called The Startup's Guide to Customer Success. It's kind of how I talk about my journey through customer success, as well as how every single startup, even regardless if you're one person or 50, how you can champion the customer at your company. Because I understand like customer expectations are so high right now. And we need to make sure that we are up to par. And you can find it on Amazon. And you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn or anything like that. I'm always happy to nerd out about customer success.
Awesome. Yeah, and I will include the link to the book and everywhere they can find you online in the description in the YouTube video that we put up of this and everything like that. So I really do appreciate you being here. Thank you so much, and we'll talk again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.